is our fifth main topic today?
This question is from Aiden T. Can someone help me understand why, if they knew that they were going to do a season 2 of Rings of Power, no matter what, they didn't start shooting the second season until a week or so ago when they know it's just going to take them years to complete it? I just read on ScreenRant that the showrunners are saying season 2 is still years away. Huh? You can't do a show and expect to keep your audience interested if you're only putting out a season every 2 or 3 years. I know some shows have had long breaks, but they're not doing themselves any favors. What do you guys think of this?
All right, Aiden, thanks a lot for saying that in. And yeah, listen, it's funny. Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power has been an interesting journey for me because I almost ditched on the show after the first episode. I mean, quite frankly, this show had a really slow start. And there's a difference between slow burn and slow. This was slow. It wasn't a slow burn. It's gotten better. Like every episode got a little bit better. Episode 4 is the first one I could say I quite enjoyed. Episode 5, I really liked a lot. Episode 6, I loved. The last episode was a little bit of a step backwards. It was still really intriguing, waiting for me to see where things go. But you're right. Word just came out, and then we knew they were going to do a second season. But I just assumed this second season would come next year. But apparently they're saying this season is actually going to be years away. This comes to us from the folks at ScreenRant who wrote the following. The Lord of the Rings of Power Season 2 may still be several years away, even though production on the prequel series should be speeding up. For those already anticipating the Rings of Power's return, showrunner McKay teases when it may happen. McKay shared an estimated timeline for Season 2's debut with The Hollywood Reporter while giving a behind-the-scenes look at the production, revealing that it may take, quote-unquote, another couple of years. Naturally, production speeds for the following seasons of The Rings of Power will be quicker than Season 1's because the crew has a base to work with. But the show's epic scale will still take time to create. The Rings of Power has set a high bar for itself with record-breaking viewership for Season 1, so Season 2 will need to find a way to not only maintain that audience, but also expand it. All right. I am perplexed by this because, listen, I understand why a lot of movies don't shoot movies back to back because you don't know how the first one's going to do. You want to kind of hedge your bets a little bit. I get it. And sometimes when you know you have a successful franchise, then you do shoot back to back. And we've seen situations of that. I am perplexed by this for a couple of reasons. Smaller reason is that this show is just starting to find its footing, in my opinion. It took them 5-6 episodes to do it, but it's finally started to find its footing. To come to the conclusion, the next episode's the finale, and then find out we're going to have to wait a couple of years to get the next season? I'm sorry, your show is not Breaking Bad. It's not like a lot of people are going to be like in my personal opinion, it's all subjective. They have just finally started getting good. I'm going to lose a lot of interest between now and whatever. I mean, you might deliver the most banging season finale in the history of TV. Okay, maybe, but let's assume that's not the case. That's a bad move. Then taking us, you're finally getting us on board with it, and now we're going to have to wait a couple of years. But here's the other reason why I think this is perplexing to me. With the sheer amount of money that they have spent on this series, we have said this before in this show, them doing a season 2 and 3 was a foregone conclusion. I mean, season 1, it's had record-breaking numbers, but let's say it was an unmitigated flop. Even if it had the lowest viewership of any TV show in history, they were still going to do seasons 2 and 3. Knowing that, why did you not just shoot this like Peter Jackson shot the original movies? Like when you know you're doing all 3 movies, just shoot it all at once. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, you got to take little breaks for some post-production and everything, but they just shot that whole thing at once. Why did production ever stop? Like if you know you're doing seasons 2 and 3, and you know that's a foregone conclusion. I mean, maybe you don't do all 5 like you're planning if the thing is a flop, but it's been a hit. Great. Why did production ever cease? Why did they just start going this? I am completely perplexed by this. From a business point of view, this is asinine. This is seriously, somebody needs to be fired over this. Like it's an automatic. We're doing season 2. Great. You would save yourself time, money, logistics, if you just planned it all as one big long shoot. And you wouldn't have to make your potential audience sit around for a couple of years with our thumbs up our asses while we're waiting for this show that we've just started to get into.
Don't judge how I watch TV.
Knew it.
You do your thing, I do mine.
We all got our thing. It's all good. But again, for me, this is, I don't know what to say. Like this seems like such a no-brainer. Again, if it were ever in question about whether or not they were going to do a season 2, I would understand that. But they didn't spend $700 million to not at least follow it up with season 2. Everybody's known that from day one. So I got to say, I'm with them on this, Chris. This I find very confusing. This I find ineptitude. I mean, seriously. We want to take a moment and thank a sponsor of today's video, HelloFresh. Guys, my wife Ann and I love using HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. And that's why it's America's #1 meal kit. When you subscribe to HelloFresh, you can check Save Money off of your fall to-do list. HelloFresh is 25% cheaper than takeout and even less expensive than grocery shopping too. And HelloFresh works with your ever-changing schedule. Plans are flexible and you can choose your meals for the week, update your preferences, or change your delivery day all in the HelloFresh app. Now, you know Ann and I are both working professionals, so when it comes to dinner time, it can be a bit of a challenge. We don't really have time to cook and we don't want to eat out all the time. And that's why HelloFresh comes through so clutch for us. Not only do we get to eat delicious, nutritious food, but Ann and I both have a lot of fun getting to cook together, following the easy-to-follow steps in getting the meals made. So go to HelloFresh.com/Campea65 and use the code Campea65 for 65% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/Campea65 using the code Campea65 for 65% off plus free shipping. I didn't know, you hear about the story. What do you think?
I mean, do they think we're elves? Do they think we're just going to give it that amount of time? And
Has it only been 20 years?
Yeah, oh my gosh, this is fine. I say this too as the biggest Rings of Power apologist probably on this channel. So much so that some of you have accused me of being paid by Amazon. I love you. That's so funny that you think I have money. I say things about thumbs up my ass. They're not poaching me, you guys. I think this is a really big misstep. And maybe there were issues, right? It is difficult to shoot things long term because of COVID and everything. I could give them a little grace on this maybe. We've seen other shows successfully take long breaks. Atlanta, BBC Sherlock. But those shows had astounding critical acclaim behind them.
Yeah.
People were rabid for more of those things. Whereas, Rings of Power has been pretty middling as far as people's reviews have gone of it. People have either been wildly into it, really hate it, or there's people who are pretty tepid in the middle, right? So I feel like this is a really, really bad choice, especially when we're finally getting some momentum in this show to just pull the e-brake. Seems like a really, really stupid decision.
Anyway, Aaron, like as somebody who's been involved with a lot of TV shows and things like that, what do you think about this move on their part?
It doesn't make any sense. And just to piggyback off of what my beautiful colleague said, with Atlanta,
You mean Chris? Sorry. Okay, sorry. Yeah, please continue.
Yes, Atlanta did have a hiatus. However, the thing about Atlanta is that is a show that was conceived by and starring Donald Glover. And so in the hiatus, in those long breaks between seasons, you still have Donald Glover starring in movies. And that's the reason why there was a hiatus.
Did season 1 even have a big hiatus between season 1 and season 2?
16 months.
Between season 1 and season 2.
Yes, and then it'll be
just a little
32
over a
months,
year.
and then it'll be 32 months since season 2 ended. But again, Donald Glover is the driving force behind that. And it's also because of the way that the show is shot and the storyline, you don't necessarily have to follow the entire story. You can jump into season 2 for the first time. And we've seen other shows, Mad Men, Sopranos, I mean, the list goes on and on. Game of Thrones, Stranger Things is the biggest recent culprit of it, that have these long, this long hiatus between seasons, but a lot of times those are shows that build up their audience over seasons 1, 2, and 3, and then they have their hiatus between maybe seasons 4 and 5, or before their final season, or when they're really wanting to, figure out, okay, how are we going to wrap up all of these storylines into the most epic season finale? And they know that people are going to come back for the season finale. So I don't think that they have, as you said, my other beautiful co-host, Jonathan Boycho.
Thank you.
Boychek, Jonathan.
It's one of those.
one of those. They have not built up a strong enough audience to validate the wait in between seasons for people to want to continue the storyline. And then also, you're right, from a business point of view, it makes no sense. There's a term called block shooting, which is where, unlike in a normal, television shoot where you have 8 days to shoot an episode and you shoot that episode and then you move to the next one. And if you were in, say, like the police station in episode 1, then you go back to the police station in episode 2. Block shooting is where you shoot numerous episodes at one time. It can get very confusing because you're like, okay, in this scene we're in episode 4 and in this scene we're in episode 7. However, that is the way to save money, because at the end of a season, a lot of times these stages are rented out to other productions. So all those sets have to be torn down and they have to be rebuilt. All of those costumes have to be put into storage somewhere and then they have to be pulled out. Actors, especially after the success of a first season, they get offers to do movies, and then it's a puzzle of figuring out how everybody's going to come back together again. And even if they are under a contract with the television show, sometimes things just don't work out. Also, tragedies happen. Sometimes an actor's just not available anymore for whatever reason. And so it just doesn't make any sense to me, especially knowing that they had this, why they wouldn't go, okay, logistically, even with COVID, especially with COVID, we have our entire cast and crew quarantined, weekly testing. We're not going to let them go on vacation and start traveling around the world and then come back with cooties. So we're just going to go ahead and block shoot the first 2 seasons, or even back-to-back shoot the first 2 seasons, lock them in, release the first season, wait a couple months, release the second season, and then when you know that you've got that rabid fandom, then you can, take a little bit more time between seasons. But it just really doesn't make any sense. I don't know who made that decision or why.
Again, with a lot of the examples too about like some of the other big shows, some of them having hiatuses, very, very rarely, if ever, is it between season 1 and season 2.
Right,
like,
exactly.
You got to get that groundswell going first. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this report coming out that they're saying that it's going to be a few years before Rings of Power even comes out again? Maybe you think that's no big deal. Maybe you think it is. Whatever your thoughts are, jump down to the comment section below and leave those thoughts there.